Welcome to another episode of the Advice First podcast. This is your host, Robert Clark, and with me on today's fantastic soon-to-be show, we have Mr. Tony Velasco. Welcome to the Advice First podcast. Tony, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and especially the Advice First podcast. I don't know if I've ever told you what the podcast is about. Actually, yeah, we had dinner over it, but I think you have a lot to share that's very fitting in the Advice First theme of, one, what you've built as a business, and then two, just how you help people, whether they're a member of your business or not. I just see you do a lot in the community, so I thought it was very fitting to have you on. And for our listeners who do not know Mr. Velasco, Tony owns Afterburn Fitness here locally in Valencia, as well as a location down in South Bay, so covering Southern California. And I would probably say it hasn't been the easiest mission.
No, I guess nothing in life is if you try anything out of the ordinary.
Absolutely. And especially after a year like 2020, I can't think of an industry more harmed than the fitness industry. I think we're battling with restaurants, for that top for the
place.
Trophy.
Yeah, we're battling for the trophy for the most affected, but
I think you might take it. At least restaurants have been able to be open in some capacity.
Yeah.
So anyways, Tony, start off, tell us a little bit about how you got to the position you're in of owning, a couple different locations and running a gym.
Yeah, right on. I'll try to keep this as short as possible, because I fell into the world of training and fell into business more by chance, I guess, than anything else. It wasn't like, I went to college and, got a business degree, and it was not that story whatsoever. It was, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get a sociology degree because I don't know what to pick. Yeah. And at some point, my dad, who was a cop, and he did bodyguarding as a side hustle thing for a while, and he became good friends with the personal trainer of like this multi-billionaire guy that he used to do bodyguarding for. And so this trainer became like a family friend. We'd go over for barbecues, all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And I was away at school at college and just came home for one of those weekends, and we went to his house for a barbecue, and he just happened to ask me I asked him. I was like, hey, because I'd obviously worked out, played sports my whole life, and was stuck in a rut, wanted a new routine, was like, hey, you got any tips? And he's like, hey, you want to come over for a workout? Yeah. I'll show you a thing or two. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, sounds good. I go over there, and the irony of all of it is I don't know if we're allowed to swear or not swear on this, but he put it to me more than I've ever had it put it to me from a workout standpoint ever. Wow. And I remember basically crawling back to my dad's house because it was walking distance and thinking to myself, people pay for this shit?
Right.
That's the irony of all of it is now here we are offering that same service. So I got done with school. I was like, hey, you know what? I said, I don't know what I want to do. And he had said, hey, you ever thought about doing personal training? I was like, no. He's like, hey, I'll show you the ropes. So he showed me the ropes. And fast forward X amount of years, and the rest is history. It ended up going well. I graduated from, working in Spectrum is where I was, and God knows how many years ago. Yeah. Got clients. Moved clients out of there, started my own outdoor bootcamp thing, rented some space, and then saved up enough money over the course of a few years to take the leap. And took the leap and took another leap for a second club. And so here we are.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I did not know that you kind of accidentally fell into it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, 100% accident. And the whole thing is, I loved the business thing is where I really fell in love with. It was a business aspect that I fell in love with. I like fitness and I like training. I love the inspiration, motivational aspect of training. That was fun. And helping people was fun. But the thing that I felt like absolutely in love with was the business side. When I started to do my own thing and I started to develop that side, that was what won me over.
And so what, I mean, the business side is a very general I think, consensus. So what about the business side was so attractive?
I mean, I love numbers, so it's weird, nerdy as it sounds. Like I would go home and get on my computer and open up Excel spreadsheets on how to grow, and just like the growth aspect, like how to build it. Yeah. And put in formulas and how I get, from this membership to that, this to that level and generate, this much revenue. And it was that aspect. It was, I guess, the numbers growth aspect.
Yeah. And so I remember early on in the development of the first Afterburn Fitness gym.
You were pre-Afterburn.
I was pre-Afterburn. I'm happy to say. You can't tell by looking at me, but
we can blame it on COVID, right?
I was thinking about that yesterday.
Or Pilates, one of the two.
Exactly. I've been there for 10 years. I mean, training with you for 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the things that you did interestingly well, I don't know if you intentionally did this or how you would have planned it, but you brought on some very influential people as clients just within the community. Mm-hmm. How did you do that?
I wish I could say that I had a strategic game plan as, how to get those clients. But the reality is it was word of mouth, probably a little bit of luck. There's a little bit of luck in everything in life, right? Yeah. But I also recognized what value those individuals could bring, not just from a like word of mouth to refer other influential people, but quite honestly, from a selfish standpoint, how I could benefit from being surrounded by those types of people. I learned one of the things that I think I learned very quickly was that I used to pick these guys' brains. I mean, I would have, very successful clients and I would ask them about stuff. Right. I would just straight ask them. And so, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you've done something very well in addition to getting the right member base, but a lot of trainers might feel loyalty to continuing to serve members like that. Whereas, you basically got it from a point to, okay, I'm training them directly and I'm the trainer, but man, I really want to open up a larger operation. Right. But, I see so many trainers just getting stuck there of I'm a trainer and the people have relationships with me, and how do I ever really turn into the business owner?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Why is it hard for most people to do that?
Yeah.
I think it's a few things. I think there's, fortunately for me, it wasn't, I wasn't battling a passion thing, meaning I think you'll find a lot of, we'll use trainers in this instance. Yeah. I think you'll find a lot of trainers that the training aspect is their true passion. Like that is what they live and die for. And so I think part of that separation that's difficult is they're leaving their true love behind. Yeah. Where for me, the business was the true love. And so that aspect was easier for me. The hard part was, just knowing that you're leaving those clients behind in some way, shape, or form, I guess. But I guess, I was still I was still in control of the club and their experience. And so while I might not be able to be with them one-on-one for an hour, I could still deliver some service to them in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being very upset when you started to phase out of teaching classes.
Was very strategically planned, because I was very fearful of if I could execute that well enough where people wouldn't riot in the streets.
Right. Yeah. And here we are, 2020, all over the place.
Right.
That's really interesting. I mean, I applaud you for doing it. Like, what advice would you have for someone looking to get to that next level?
You have to follow your heart, number one. Because if my true passion had been the training side and I tried to force myself into the business side, I think I would have lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens to a lot. They think that's the way they're supposed to go, and then they don't really love it, and so it ends up not going well when they should have just stayed with that. So I think that's number one is follow your heart. But two, if you are going to go the business and leave that individual connection kind of behind on some level, you got to have the right people in place. You absolutely have to. And obviously you're going to win some and lose some along the way. They're not all perfect. But if you don't have the right people in place, I mean, you can just forget about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you might be, I have this 80% rule, which is, and it's like in all our manuals, and it's that from a hiring standpoint, kind of how we evaluate team members, mm-hmm. is obviously we have someone who's the best lift coach and who's the best, Fit 45 or interval coach or front desk. Mm-hmm. That as long as everybody else who is in that same field is at least 80% as good as the best, then most people won't know the difference. Yeah. And that is good enough. Once it starts to fall below that, when you're starting to play with someone who's half as good or 60% as good, that's when you start to lose. And so getting those people that are at least 80% as good as you to replace doing the things that you used to do, I think that's always been my motto.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. There's a ton of truth to that. If I thought about implementing something like that, then I start to think of, okay, what metrics can you pay attention to mm-hmm. that give you the clear judgment of, is this person passing the test or not? Yeah. What are you looking at?
Like, what are we literally looking at?
I mean, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, the funny part is, quick side note, people were like, oh, it must be nice to not have a boss. I'm like, no. Thousands of bosses, and each one of them walk through the door every day at Afterburn, right? No. Like every member is our boss, basically. And so they're part of the metric. We are watching attendance numbers. We're watching reaction. We're literally sending out surveys at times, engaging with them. And so we're getting a lot of information, data collection, if you will, from members. Yeah. That's one aspect. The other aspect is we weigh, and I'm just talking about trainers right now. We have, we have different categories for different sectors of the clubs. But from a trainer standpoint, I mean, energy is huge. We're looking for, it's a little bit difficult to quantify, but that feeling where someone just makes you feel comfortable, right? That you just have those people skills, that you give off a welcoming presence, right? Like, so we're looking for stuff like that, that they know members' names, I mean, we're obviously looking at programming, but quite honestly, like the programming stuff, I'm sure like that stuff can be taught. You can mm-hmm. teach somebody, follow this programming. Yeah. Well, you can't teach energy. Or it's very difficult to teach energy, to teach people skills, mm-hmm. to teach all of that stuff.
Again, I've been a member for 10 years. You would have thought I would have learned the programming aspect by now. Nope. I've been working out back on my own for like a month now, and I just had to start taking classes all over again because I'm like, I'm useless. I just stand there. I'm like, is there someone I can talk to? Or
that's part of the strategy is we make you feel like you know what you're doing. To let you try something on your own just long enough to be like, nope, you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have a gym that makes you feel like an athlete, even if you're not.
That's the goal.
I'm curious, like, how did you come up? Because it doesn't look like a very traditional gym. It looks like, what the Los Angeles Rams might train in. How did you come up with all the different aspects that you wanted in a club?
Well, again, I think it's easy to say that now. Yeah. I don't think you would call the original Afterburn that you were a part of in 2011 a Rams training facility.
That's true.
It was white walls. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Some equipment scattered around. We had to,
that's true.
If for the camera, you had to like wheel on and screw on the plate.
Gosh,
do you remember that?
Right.
Like we didn't even have bumper plates. We had to like screw the metal plates on. But once the facility or the gym became successful enough to kind of put money back into it to start to develop it, I was able at that point then to, go after what that grander vision was. Yeah. Which I wanted to be something different. The last thing I wanted to do was just open, I didn't want to open up another gym where that was the exact same thing as a Gold's or an LA Fitness or every other big box club that just had tons of cardio equipment, some machines to do your own thing. I kind of wanted to, not just from a community cultural standpoint, but also from a facility, like how it feels when you walk through the door standpoint. I wanted to create something that took all the things that were amazing about being a kid and playing sports and how fun it was to be on a team and to have that camaraderie and that energy and that positivity and that push and put that into the way the systems are built, into how the classes run and how the training runs, how the front desk operates, and also to what the club actually looks like when you walk through and you see the turf and you see all these, more fun things.
Right. Yeah. I'd say you've accomplished it for sure. How many employees are you up to now?
Well, pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Roughly.
Yeah. I mean, it's all, we're still somewhere in the, we were probably just under 100, pre-COVID, and we're probably still in the 80 range post-COVID. And really incredible. The post-COVID stuff was more of just or during COVID, it was, good things people that, found other things over the course of that 12-month window where we were basically shut down. So
yeah, thank goodness.
Yeah. Fortunately, we've had 90% of our top tier staff back. Right. Everyone's back. So that's really cool.
How did you come up with all the different roles and responsibilities for everything? I mean, because I'm thinking, in a gym you have, yes, your front desk and the sanitary aspects of the gym too, but you get a membership director, you got operations, you have all these different things because you're servicing clients on a daily basis walking through that door. Was it a matter of you putting down everything onto paper and outlines, or did you outsource some of that?
The vast majority of it was me putting it on paper and working through it. Again, putting it on paper, crumbling it up, throwing it, that didn't work. Let's try this. Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of, learning as you go. But one of the other things that I've always likened ourselves to, is we're in the hospitality industry. It's not just the gym industry. And I think that's one of the biggest things that a lot of these clubs miss is we're the difference between when you walk into a Motel 8 or Motel 6 or whatever they're called, and you walk into the Four Seasons. Of course, the Four Seasons has nicer things, right? And has a nicer setup. But one of the other big main differences is how you're greeted and how you're treated. And you know what I mean? And it's Mr. Clark this. And, it's that kind of stuff that I really wanted to hone in on. So when I was looking to build out who these placeholders were or who's executing these things, it was taking that kind of a viewpoint from it too.
Yeah, I love that. It's a huge difference in the, like you said, both are going to give you towels and water
and weights and machines. Right. I mean, what are we going to sell somebody when they come in? Well, our turf is a little bit greener than the one over at LA Fitness, or our barbells are 2020 models, not 20. Exactly. No one really cares about that. Yep. It's the experience and the feeling when you walk in, and then it's how it's executed by the personnel on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm fortunate to know about you, and listeners wouldn't necessarily, but I would almost consider you a serial entrepreneur, or an entrepreneur of many things, I guess.
I mean, I would like to think of myself as that. I don't know if I've achieved that label quite yet, but I'll take it.
But I mean, you've continued to grow Afterburn, and you've continued to explore other complementary
yes, absolutely.
Avenues. Talk to me a little bit about, how you're coming up with ideas of other ways to, serve people or other business opportunities within fitness.
Yeah. Well, obviously, we can talk about Ride, which ironically we did an outdoor spin class the other day because we were doing a trial or an audition rather for a new cycle instructor who's amazing. We brought her on. She's going to be a rock star. So that was cool.
Nice.
And because she has so much energy and the music was on fire, it like brought me back to Ride again. And I'm like, oh man, I really want to do that. So I was like, no, stop, Tony, stop. Because my mind starts to go there. But Ride was just something that the whole idea of it came after a challenge event. I'm not sure if you know this story. Mm-mm. But we had done an outdoor cycle thing at the top of the Baldwin Hills Park, and I'm sitting there watching it play out. And it was the first time we had done it like that, where it actually kind of had an outdoor setup up on the hill overlooking LA. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, what if we scaled this thing? Like, what if we scaled this thing to concert level, put it in a rad venue? I think this could sell. Mm-hmm. And so I went down that path and sought out investors, had investors that had basically, without actually cutting the check at that point, had basically signed on. So we had raised a decent amount of capital. I had already been in talks with bike manufacturers, already been in talks with venues, from Rose Bowl to the Coliseum. We had to Santa Monica Pier. We had a bunch of this stuff lined up. And as I started to then dive into the numbers and open up those Excel spreadsheets, because we're really trying to go over the top. I mean, you've been at a club in Vegas when they have like the what's it called, stuff that shoots? Is it CO2? I don't know. We know when like they spray you with the white misty stuff, whatever that's called. We had those jets everywhere and huge screens for the back of the stage and whatnot, and that stuff was getting expensive. Yeah. And as I started to double down on the numbers and look into it, I'm like, wait a minute. I think if this is gonna work, we've got to scale this thing bigger. Because I wanted to kind of like, maybe this first event should not be massive. We're like, let's do like 300 or 400 person event. Not like 1,000 or 2,000 person event. Right. And when I say that, I mean like per ride. Yeah. So we would do like multiple heats throughout, all that kind of stuff. So we would have, the initial thought was we were going to have to sell 3,000 tickets, call it 300 seats and 12 heats over the course of a 2-day window. When I started looking at the numbers, I was like, if we're going to make a decent margin, we need to put 500 to 600 people per heat, which means we were going to need to sell 7,000 to 10,000 seats out the gate. Wow. So honestly, it was like, you know what? We're going to need to raise more money. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right, and we need to raise more capital because this is going to take longer. Prior to that, the game plan, prior to that final thought in my head, we were getting ready to launch in January our marketing game plan
of 2020.
Wow. January of 2020, and we were going to have our first event in either March or April of 2020. And it was literally in November of 2019 that's when I was like, you know what, let's pull the plug on it for right now until we can raise more money. We'll revisit this in 6 months, kind of a thing. Wow. Sure enough, COVID hits in March, and we literally would have had our thing booked. Maybe we would have had, insurance that would have covered, an event cancellation thing. Right. But otherwise, we would have been out hundreds of thousands of dollars. Wow. So talk about a stroke of good luck, right? Or stroke of good luck, and just saying, hey, let's pump the brakes and pause on this thing because it would have been all gone. Oh we would have, yeah. We had like a $200,000, marketing campaign game plan. And all of that, even if we get the event cancellation, even if we get that, we're not getting the marketing dollars back. Right. Right? Yeah. So we at least would have lost all of that. So who knows what'll come down the pipeline if we'll get this thing rolling again. It is something that I still think is super cool and could be a thing, but we'll have to wait till COVID passes.
I bet your investors are big fans of you.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like the sigh of relief on their end. Yeah, absolutely.
No kidding. I mean, what can you learn from something like that? Because it wasn't self-inflicted.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't know if there is anything to learn other than life is going to throw you curveballs that you have zero control over. Yeah. And you have to, fortunately for us, we got out of the way before it hit us. Yeah. But even if it did, like, that's just going to happen sometimes. And it's how you react to it, not how well you can necessarily avoid stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
that's incredible. Have you ever thought of scaling Afterburn to new locations? Or I know at one point you had talked about franchising or other things, and then you've also thought about other ways to just help gym owners without giving them a branding name per se.
Yeah, I mean, this is, now that the world is kind of getting back to normal again, I'll be able to kind of decide which route I want to go. Obviously, I kind of tested the waters with a few different things, all like pre-COVID, and that kind of reset everything.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, we were going to open our third location in Westlake. Again, talk about irony. Sometimes I wonder, I'm not a believer in fate whatsoever, but there are some times I'm like, wait, like sometimes things, I'm like, how is this not happening? Like, talk about happening for a reason.
Yeah.
Because we were supposed to open up our third club, and I decided to pump the brakes on that one. Well, take that back. Technically, we were like getting ready to sign the contract for the lease, and we just couldn't come to terms. So they backed out because we wanted too much TI. So they backed out of the deal. And so then there was nothing else on the market. And so that's when I was like, you know what? It costs a lot of money to open up a big club. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of upfront costs. So what other ways can we scale with a little bit less, capital that needs to be required at, every interval. Mm-hmm. And so then that's when the ride thing came. That's when that kind of happened. And then, the whole gym rev thing literally started probably right before we shut down. So, but to answer your question, yes, I would love to be able to get back to all of those things, as soon as normalcy resumes.
Absolutely. What would you say drives you to come up with all these and pursue all of these ideas?
A severe case of ADD. I don't know. Like I'm just, I think it's that same thing that excites me when I used to go home and build that spreadsheet on my computer in Excel, and just the growth aspect. I just like, I do not have any talent when it comes to building actual tangible things. Like I could not build this desk. I cannot build anything. Like my handyman skills are very limited. I put a fan up in my wife's room when before we got married. That's like my crowning achievement of like building.
It's still there?
It's no. Well, it was. Well, I don't know. It depends. I'm not sure if people who live there now, if it's still there, but hopefully.
Right.
So that's never been my thing, to build things, but I do love the idea of building and growing companies rather than tables or houses or whatever. And so I think it's kind of just the thing that I think is why I love stocks and financial markets. It's I don't have a hand in the growing of that particular company, but the growth of my portfolio and that kind of stuff. So just growth, period, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. You've been working on a book for a
very long time.
Yeah, a few years maybe.
Yeah.
What can you share about that?
I can share that I rewrote it probably 19,000 times.
Wow.
No, and I think that's, so again, to all future potential book writers out there that have zero writing experience, which is where I fall. I never would have considered myself a good writer in school. I was more of a math guy than an English guy. And so now going through the process, I would have a much better concept and understanding of how to do it. But when I first did it and having zero clue and just kind of going with the flow, it was a year worth of writing and learning before I could even call it something that I then needed to kind of retool and, but I can tell you that the journey was really cool. It's a book purely, it's a mindset thing. I shared when you came on my podcast forever ago, the story that kind of inspired everything on what kind of drives me. And it's right now the title is it's a working title, but the overall concept and one of the potential titles is Fear, Regret, Not Failure. And it's the idea that fear basically drives almost all human decision. You're a marketing guy. It's one of marketing 101. We've seen it with the coronavirus for the last 12 months on how much fear drives behavior. And it drives 99% of people's behavior and their lack of ability to jump and take risk and take chances. And so you end up regretting not doing all those things 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. And so the book is about how to build that mindset so that you don't let fear control your life. So that you don't have that regret down the road, that you fear the regret of things rather than the potential failure. Failure is fine. Let me lose. I can lose all day. I don't care.
God, I love that. That is a phenomenal mindset to have. Not everyone has it. I feel like that's one of those things that even if you've possessed it at one point in your career or in your life, it's very easy to go back to the complacency or, man, okay, I didn't fail that time. It paid off. Now there's so many people that get to a certain point that stall out because now they have something to lose.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to continue that mindset.
It is. And I don't know what that exact trigger is. I think it's just a lack of care, and not in a bad way. A lack of. I think that when you have stuff to lose, obviously that's a fear to go back to zero. But is that really what's stopping you and me as an individual, or is it the fear of whatever your brother's going to say or your neighbor's going to say, that, they're going to laugh at you because your business failed. And so is that the bigger emotional driver to prevent people from doing stuff, is what they're going to say? Because one of the things I talk about in the book is, there's a lot of things that create the foundation for this mindset, right? And one of those things is self-esteem. There's nobody on this planet who is uber successful who is not also self-confident. If you don't have confidence, you are not going to be able to do it.
Yep.
And I think one of the biggest misnomers, if that's the right use of the word, is the word itself is self-esteem. Self-esteem does not come from you. It comes from everybody around you. And because no one thinks they suck at anything until they're told they suck at something, right? No one thinks they're ugly until they're told they're ugly.
I don't know. No one's told me I suck at working out, and I feel like I suck at working out.
And so again, one of the pillars is your inner circle, right?
Yeah.
So if you have an inner circle that is constantly beating you down and not building you up, and at the same time, maybe they're giving you a false sense of how great you are. That's not good either, right? But the reality is you have to have that feedback that comes from your outside world. You have to strategically go seek out who is going to be a part of that feedback, because that feedback is going to drive your actions.
Yeah, 1,000%. Sounds like it's going to be a great book.
I hope so.
I'm really excited about this. If the title changes, we will be sure to update our listeners.
Yes.
Because I know the alternate title, and it's probably not appropriate for the podcast, but we'll plug it. As not an author, but as a reader, what books, authors are you paying attention to?
I'm not a big guy who's got his eye on every new book that's coming out. If you were to ask me like what books that I've read that have severely like impacted my life, I'm probably going to tell you things that are old that maybe everyone else has already heard of. I don't know if that's boring or not.
Hope it's not Green Eggs and Ham. That's very controversial.
Well, you know what? Never mind then. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is probably the book that changed, I don't know about changed my life, but changed my perspective more than anything. And I know it's that way for a lot of people. And I think it was because it was just so real and so honest and simple and just, you know what I mean? Easy to grasp and understand and relatable. That's what I'm looking for.
Side note, have you ever played his board game, Cash Flow?
I have not. Is it good?
No, I haven't either. I really want to.
He's kind of made a bigger headway back into mainstream again. And maybe it's because of his game. I'm not sure.
And very strong opinions, too.
Yeah.
I mean, but yeah, I agree. Great.
Yeah, I like him. Robert Kiyosaki is he's a smart man, and his book changed a lot of people's lives.
Yep, absolutely. I know I interrupted you. Is there anyone else you would add to that list?
In terms of like authors in particular,
or books?
I mean, I've read books. None of them, like I read 10X.
Yeah.
I love the concept. The concept of Grant Cardone 10X, I think, is phenomenal. I didn't love the book itself.
Right.
Gary Vaynerchuk, I've read one or two of his books. Again, concepts are great, but no, I just don't remember. I read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week. I didn't love that book. I'm a super. Maybe it's because Robert Kiyosaki's was like more like third grade level, and that's more my style. So I like Green Eggs and Ham.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
That's what I like to roll with.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. As we wrap, how can our listeners find you?
Well, I'm trying to get on this TikTok game. So I do have a TikTok. I do not have a big follower base yet, but.
It only takes one video.
That's it. That's why. That's why I posted 2 TikToks today. So we'll see.
One dance.
I know. If that's got to work my dance moves. Clearly,
exactly.
Stop working on spreadsheets and start working on my woe.
Take a Pilates class.
Yeah. Then you would that would somehow find its way onto the internet, and then that would be bad.
And then you go viral.
That's true.
Okay.
Maybe that's the trick.
What's your TikTok handle?
TikTok handle is Mindset Tony. And then Instagram is Tony Velasco and then an underscore. Those are the 2 best ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you for having me. It was a blast.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Next Financial Group, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Prosperitas Financial is not an affiliate of Next Financial Group, Inc. This material is not intended as an offer or solicitation for the purchase of sale of any security or other financial instrument. Past performance does not guarantee future performance. All the views expressed are those of Robert Clark and Prosperitas Financial and not of those of Next Financial Group, Inc. Next does not offer tax or legal advice. The S&P 500 is a market cap weighted index composed of common stocks of 500 leading companies in the leading industries of the U.S. economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is a price weighted index of 30 actively traded blue chip stocks.